New Mexico history. Secrets of the Southwest, from ancient Pueblo to Spanish Empire. New Mexico, a land of mystery, vast skies, and ancient stories carved into canyon walls. It became the 47th state of the United States in 1912, but its story begins long before the stars and stripes ever flew over its mesas. Ranked fifth in total area among the 50 states, New Mexico stretches across a rugged and untamed landscape, touching Colorado to the north, Texas and Oklahoma to the east, and the ancient Mexican states of Chihuahua and Sonora to the south. Arizona flanks the west, once part of the same vast territory until the border was redrawn in 1863. And in the remote northwestern corner, four states converge: Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, meeting at a single point in the American Southwest. It is a place where boundaries blur and stories overlap. The capital city, Santa Fe, stands as a sentinel of centuries, older than the United States itself. Early history. Long before European eyes gazed across these lands, New Mexico was already ancient. Its first inhabitants, Native American groups, had thrived here for at least 10,000 years. These were not fleeting nomads, but builders, farmers, and artists. The Pueblo peoples created complex societies with remarkable irrigation systems and adobe villages that still whisper their stories in the wind. Even today, their ruins stand resilient, etched in stone and silence. But the land was not without conflict. In the 15th century, more nomadic tribes like the Navajo and Apache swept down from the north, fierce and mobile. They brought new dynamics to an already complex cultural landscape, sometimes trading, sometimes warring, always adapting. Spanish and Mexican rule. But it was the myth of wealth, of golden cities shimmering in the desert heat, that summoned the next chapter. In 1540, driven by rumors of the seven cities of Cibola, Spanish explorer Francisco Vázquez de Coronado crossed into what is now New Mexico. He found no gold, only endless land and proud people who would not yield easily. Disappointed, Coronado returned south, but the seed of conquest had been planted. For decades, Spanish friars and soldiers wandered the territory, seeking converts and control. Then, in 1595, a man named Juan de Oñate received the crown's blessing to colonize the north. By 1610, Santa Fe had been founded, anchoring Spain's grip on the region. It would become the oldest capital city in what is now the United States. Yet peace was an illusion. Beneath the surface, tension simmered between cultures, between faiths, between past and future. For nearly a century after its founding, Spanish rule in New Mexico was shaped by the cross and the sword. Missionary zeal dominated the region, as friars sought to reshape the spiritual lives of native peoples. But forced conversions, cultural suppression, and the destruction of sacred traditions stirred deep resentment. In 1680, that resentment erupted. The Pueblo Rebellion, one of the most successful native uprisings in North American history, swept the Spanish from the land. For 12 years, the Pueblo people reclaimed their ancestral world, banishing European presence and burning out the missions that had tried to erase them. But by 1700, Spanish power had returned. With renewed force, they re-established settlements across the region. One of the most important was Albuquerque, founded in 1706. It soon became a vital southern hub, while Santa Fe remained the political and spiritual heart of the North. Life in colonial New Mexico was rugged and isolated. The Rio Grande Valley, fed by its tributaries, supported subsistence agriculture, corn, beans, squash, while sheep and horses became pillars of survival and commerce. Trade stretched eastward toward the Comanche, who bartered wool, furs, and horses, likely connected to French goods filtering in from distant New Orleans. By the year 1800, the population of New Mexico may have reached 25,000, a thriving colony compared to the sparse settlements in Texas or California. Still, it was a world largely forgotten by its rulers. Nearly 900 miles from Mexico City, New Mexico stood as a remote and underdeveloped frontier. Spanish officials in the capital offered little in the way of protection or investment. Into this power vacuum, French traders began to arrive, first as shadows, then as real competitors, sneaking into the economy of Santa Fe and threatening Spain's grasp on the region. But it wasn't commerce alone that imperiled New Mexico. The Apache and Comanche peoples, fiercely independent and highly mobile, launched repeated raids on settlements. The meager force of roughly 100 soldiers stationed in Santa Fe proved no match. These attacks continued well into the 1800s, even after the United States arrived. In 1806, something unexpected occurred. Lieutenant Zebulon Pike of the U.S. Army, under secret orders, entered New Mexican territory. He was captured, detained, and eventually released. But his reports of the region, rich with opportunity and beauty, spread quickly. Soon, American fur trappers and traders began trickling into the Southwest, following the promise of the land. Then, in 1821, Mexico gained independence from Spain. New Mexico, now a province of the Republic of Mexico, found itself at a turning point. The Santa Fe Trail, stretching from Missouri into the heart of the Southwest, brought growing contact and tension with the United States. Territory and state. War came in 1846. As the Mexican-American War ignited, U.S. forces under General Stephen Kearny swept into New Mexico. There was little resistance. In exchange for oaths of loyalty, local residents were granted amnesty and citizenship. By 1850, the territory of New Mexico was officially recognized by Congress. But peace was fleeting. During the American Civil War, Confederate troops from Texas launched a bold campaign to claim New Mexico for the South. They were driven back by the Colorado Volunteers, a force of infantrymen who arrived just in time to turn the tide. Yet, beneath the surface, New Mexico remained divided. The southern part of the territory harbored rebel sympathizers long after the war's final shot was fired. The latter half of the 19th century in New Mexico was a time of conquest, rebellion, and uneasy transformation. In 1864, the once unyielding Navajo Nation was subdued. Under U.S. orders, they were forced into a brutal march across hundreds of miles, known as the Long Walk, to a desolate reservation near Fort Sumner. Conditions were harsh, and the experiment soon failed. By 1868, the Navajo were granted a much larger homeland in northwestern New Mexico and northeastern Arizona. A new beginning, but one born of loss. The Apache, more elusive and fiercely independent, would not surrender so easily. Though they were settled on 2 reservations by 1880, rebellion continued, led by names etched into legend: Geronimo, Cochise, and Victorio. Their resistance echoed through the canyons until 1886, when Geronimo finally laid down arms. Yet even as tribal resistance waned, conflict of a different kind erupted. New Mexico's sprawling deserts became battlegrounds, not of nations, but of ranchers. The late 19th century saw the rise of a powerful cattle industry. But as land grew scarce and claims overlapped, range wars ignited. Fences were cut, guns were drawn, and in Lincoln County, blood stained the soil. It was here in 1878, during the peak of the violence, that a young outlaw named Billy the Kid entered the fray, his revolver carving his name into Wild West folklore. His eventual killer, Sheriff Pat Garrett, became just as legendary. But theirs was only a glimpse into the deeper tensions tearing New Mexico apart. Meanwhile, technology crept in on steel tracks. In 1880, the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway reached Albuquerque. With it came new waves of settlers, fresh markets, and a growing agricultural movement driven by advanced irrigation. The frontier was slowly being reshaped, not erased, but reimagined. Statehood and early 20th century. On January 6, 1912, New Mexico officially joined the Union. But in many ways, it remained a land apart. Cattle drives still rumbled across open range. Stagecoaches linked remote communities to the expanding railways. In rural Hispano and Native American villages, life moved to rhythms older than the flag flying overhead. Change, however, was inevitable. The arrival of the automobile dissolved centuries of isolation. Roads carved through mountains and deserts, connecting the most remote pueblos to distant cities. Young people left for opportunity. Farmers embraced trucks. Traditions began to bend under the weight of modernity. The Great Depression deepened the transformation. Through the New Deal, federal relief programs, brought government aid into communities that had long existed on the periphery. For many New Mexicans, it was their first encounter with the machinery of the U.S. state. World War II shattered what little remained of the old ways. Young men, Hispano, Anglo, and Native American alike, were drafted into war. Others found work in newly established government facilities. A Japanese internment camp was erected just outside Santa Fe, a grim reflection of the times. And in Los Alamos, history turned atomic. In 1945, the first nuclear bomb was born in New Mexico's high desert. Its terrible power unleashed not far from ancient cliff dwellings and sacred tribal lands. The Manhattan Project forever tied the state to a new, dangerous chapter in human history. After the war, military installations remained, and families poured in. The population soared. From 1940 to 1960, New Mexico's numbers nearly doubled. Modern era. By the late 20th century, cities like Santa Fe and Taos evolved into havens for artists, health seekers, and affluent transplants, many fleeing the crowds of California for the quiet mystique of the Southwest. Still, growth brought challenges. Despite new industries, the extraction of oil, natural gas, and minerals, and improved agricultural techniques, New Mexico remained one of the poorest states in the nation, a paradox wrapped in beauty and contradiction. Even environmental concerns couldn't stop progress. In March 1999, the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, the world's first underground storage facility for radioactive waste, opened in southeastern New Mexico, a haunting symbol of the state's evolving role in global affairs. As the 21st century dawned, New Mexico's transformation only accelerated. The state's population continued to climb, especially in the urban corridors around Albuquerque and Santa Fe. But the expansion wasn't just in numbers. It was in terrain once thought untouchable. East of Tijeras Canyon, a place once considered a natural barrier, a new horizon emerged. Roads and bridges conquered the rugged pass, opening the high plains to a wave of suburban growth. Albuquerque pushed outward, its skyline stretching, its people multiplying. Santa Fe, too, saw its boundaries blur. The ancient capital, long nestled in the shadow of mountains and mystery, expanded southward, out into the vast plains beyond the city proper. What was once open space now echoed with new homes, new roads, and new lives. But even amid growth and modernity, something timeless lingers in New Mexico, in its adobe walls, in its desert winds, in the silence between ancient stones. It remains a place where past and present intertwine, a land that refuses to forget. If you've enjoyed this journey through New Mexico's mysterious history, don't forget to subscribe to History Love for more untold stories of America's past. Like this video to support independent history content. Comment below, what part of New Mexico's history surprised you the most?